to part 2 of citing things. I'm going to show you a couple of papers now that will help you to, or that we can use as a framework to discuss how to do these things. It may be a little bit small on your screen, but you can find this paper because it's open access. You can see it as one of mine, Ratcliffe, and it's open access, so in PLOS One, so you can download it and have a look at it in proper size and zoom in and things. What you can see here is there are several sections, and it is formed very much like a lab report, which is fairly standard for a paper, or better said, lab reports are more modelled on papers because that is what we're trying to aim at. And your teachers, if you're from somewhere else, will also have been trying to aim at a scientific paper because that's the standard way of presenting data. In the introduction, you can see that every thought and every line has a reference, and in this case they are numbered. This is 1 to 3, this one is number 4, and then we go back and label 1 to 3 again, 5 and 6, and each of those is where I got the information for those, for that particular idea from. Is the introduction. So logically, I wouldn't have invented all of these things. This is a piece of information that I'm getting from somewhere else, and therefore it's only fair to cite it. And as we had in my other example, if somebody doubts that piece of information, then they can look at the reference and see whether it's an original reference and see whether it says what I claim it says, because then my claim is more robust, because obviously if it survives a while and nobody finds a mistake, then it's good. Obviously if nobody reads it, that's not so useful, but if a lot of people read it, then the probability of finding a mistake is very high. Introduction is usually not a very highly read part, but we always have to write them. So we can see, let's have a look at those references maybe, 1 to 3. We'll zoom down to the bottom, let's see whether they're in order. Here they are, references 1 to 3, so we can see that in this particular format we've got the name of the authors, the date, the title of the article, and where it was published in Nature, that particular one, and where to find it. So that would be the page number, the chapter, the edition, whatever kind of other information. There are separate ways of writing these for different publications. So many publications don't contain the title of the article, for example. There are alternatives, or there are ways to cite properly book chapters, book excerpts, and what else am I trying to think of? Any other types of information we might find, so a conference proceeding or a personal communication, which may or may not be published. Obviously, something that's not published, if we're looking at it from outside and trying to work out how well we trust it, is a very low level of trust compared to something that's been published and other people have been able to look at it and complain about it. So those are my references. Let's go up and have a look at one of the other sections. So in the results, for example, we will see that I have also referred to some papers. So not so much in there, because that's where I was actually measuring things, but more where I'm going to discuss the results, because typically when I discuss the results, I would like to compare them to the results that other people have done, and there I would be making citations. So here we've got one where we're saying, okay, we've got this measurement. I've measured the force, I think, that it takes to pull a snail off a surface, and I'm going to check whether that's important. And so I have a look for the same value that somebody else has measured and find it's roughly the same. Obviously, I've given my value, I haven't given their value, but I have given the reference number 14, so we can look that up and find out which one it is. This numbering style is fairly common. It's very common in chemistry. It's more common in other sciences. There is another referencing style, which we will get onto in a moment, which I would recommend if you don't have to use this numbering style. The numbering style goes like this. The number of the reference goes in number order in the text, and then at the end you add them in the order that they appear in the text, so number order as references. The most common is that there is a difference between some of the values. So in this case there isn't, but very commonly one of the things, so either the date or the publication name, is in bold and one of them is in italics, so that it's easier to find a particular piece of information while you're looking through it. But that will depend on the journal that you apply to. And when you're writing for yourself, for a thesis or something, you can decide. Typically, I would advise you to just take some kind of standard from somebody else. This is another article of mine. It's called Progress in Superhydrophobic Surface Development. I wrote it with these other two people, and Paul is the one who put it on the internet here for us to all see. It's on a thing called ResearchGate, where you can often get free access to preprints of articles. That would be legally the version before the journal has done something to it, in which case the copyright still belongs to the author in certain cases. In this case, we were allowed, or he was allowed, to upload it onto ResearchGate and we can see it. In the other case, it was an open access article, which is one that everybody can look at, because we had to pay to put it on there, and that carries with it the advantage that everybody can look at it. This article we didn't pay for, and therefore you can't get it, but we can have this preprint. We can't get the real version. It's got little weird mugshots, and you can see instantly the citation method, instead of being in square brackets, is in superscript, raised up and smaller. That's number 1, citation in the introduction. Typically in the abstract there are no citations that can make life awkward sometimes. Anyway, here are the mugshots of us. That's not so important. What I want to do here is to show you what happens in a review article, because if you're writing a project or the project proposal or a literature report, then that part where you're saying this is what people have done up till now is covering other people's work, and it's slightly different from the style to a normal paper, because obviously you're going to be citing only other people's work and not showing your results. So that whole section where I showed what my snails did is not going to be in here. So we can see that I'm citing people in here. Typically Latin is in italics, so you can see this et al is italicized. That's because it's Latin, so that we know it's Latin while we're looking at it. In this case, there are A, B, and C's in there. You can see 1B, 1C. We'll have a look at that. Oh, let's have a look at it now. So if we go to, oops, damn it, I've gone too far down. So if we go to the references, you can see reference 1 has 1A, B, C, D, and E, and that's because that covers a single topic, and we can refer to those all at once without having a large number of numbers in there. We can see that several of them only have 1 reference in, and other ones have more than 1. That one's got 3 from us, so you can see my name on there 3 times. So we come to the reason why I'm on this review article. In review articles we see very often, or it's easier to find, more exploitative versions of citation. So in this case it's my review article, and we took images from other people and used them in our article. So you can see in the normal introduction, as we were looking at earlier, there's an idea that comes from a paper or from a book, and the citation is to that book, and it comes at the end of the sentence. After the idea, sometimes if there are 2 ideas in a sentence, it comes in the middle of the sentence. So then there is another type of citation which refers to more, taking more of the information from the original paper, either the text, in which case it has to be in some kind of way, so either in inverted commas, in speech marks, or inset to show that it's a direct quote, and then we need more to show that it's more than just the idea. And here we've got an image and we're doing exactly the same thing. So if we look here, The images in this case have an extra rider which says images reprinted with permission from, and then the copyright holder. Obviously, if it's not published to the general public, you don't have to ask for permission. Well, not obviously, but you don't have to ask for permission. You can reprint without permission. And as long as you write that, then it's clear that you haven't asked for permission, and that's fine. One is allowed to do that as long as you don't use it for something else. So you can't show it to other people or sell it. Those become other uses and you have to ask for those. In this case, it's an article that was published, and so we had to ask for permission, and there we have to write the copyright. Usually in the text, so in this particular one, they are also with numbers. Very often you write out the whole reference inside the figure heading because you're actually taking the figure. Sometimes you have to modify it, and then you have to say that you've modified it. And now we get on to the alternative formatting style, because I said there were two. This style is easier to use for certain purposes. So I would advise it if you're writing a short document. If you're writing an internal document, obviously if the journal asks for it, because then you have to do their style. But also for lab reports and things. The advantage of this is it works better without having to mess with software too much. Here it takes up a little bit more space. So if you have a word or character count, it's a bit of a problem. That's one of the disadvantages. Here what you do is you write the first author, their surname, and the year. First author, et al, if there's more than one, and the year in brackets in the text where you want to refer to it, so instead of a number. The advantage of that is if you want to refer to it again, you just write it in again. And if you then write something before it, there isn't an issue with the numbers reorganizing, because you just leave it in and add the new one. So if you have multiple references to the same one, you don't have to work out how to get the same number to go in, which by hand is easy, but it's easy to mess up. If you add a new one, you have to change them all. By a computer program, it is somewhat awkward very often to persuade your word processing program to do that thing, to put the same coded number in the set twice. It is possible usually, but it's always fiddly. When you get to the end of the article, let me zoom down to the end of the article to show you. Don't know how long this one is. You get all of the references, obviously, and they are simply in alphabetical order by first author's last name. Then it's relatively easy. If we see one in the text, we know which order the alphabet's in, and then we can find it at the end. There is one issue. Obviously, some people, or some people's names particularly, come up multiple times in the same year, and then you need to have A and B for those particular ones. It's not a massive problem, but it is an issue to be aware of. This, as I say, is a better system for shorter pieces, and it's quicker to use. So it's less fiddly, it's quicker to use. The number system is more common in science and a little bit in engineering, although this is an engineering article that we're looking at here, just to be open about where it is. It's from, that doesn't say, it's from this journal, the Anti-Corrosion Methods and Materials Journal from Endnote Publishing. So it's an article that I could get for free. I think you normally have to pay for them, but this is an example. You can get hold of this one and have a look at them. The style is so not so common in journals in science, but for a report in science it's perfectly fine. Yeah. It's possible to get software that helps us with referencing. This is an example. This is Mendeley. The reason I've gone to this is that you can make a free account for this. This is one of our reference managers that our university pays for, but we also have Endnote as another one that we also pay for. It works pretty much the same. It looks actually very similar. The free versions are also very similar. They've got much the same functionality. The paid for ones often have a little bit more functionality than the free ones, obviously. but you can get the kind of service if you need it. The use of these is we put our database on there, usually from where we saved it, or we type them in extra from the internet. Let me go to it, switch to it for me. So we can see here are my papers, and I installed these from a search engine, Web of Science, which we will look at in another time. We've got this list of papers. Some of them can have the PDF, the actual contents inserted, and we can use that to talk to our article, but we can also then use this to insert references into our document. So this is, for example, one. It's about biochar, and I would like to cite it. So we can either press this, which says cite it into your word processor, or we can do it in the other direction. Let's do it the other way around because it's slightly easier. What I'll do is I'll go into my Word document, and then we will pull the articles out of this instance of Citavi, which I'm just going to leave open in the background. If it's open in the background, you can then copy these out of it and put them into our document, and we can use whichever style that we want. Afterwards, we can change whichever style between the Harvard and the Vancouver, writing out the names or having the numbers, and having the numbers as normal in square brackets or in superscript, whatever we want to do. We can change that afterwards, which is really handy. So here's my document. I'm using Microsoft Word, but it works pretty well with other word processing packages, as you saw in the pop-up. What you can see, noise. So again, it's a little bit weird for me, but you can see up here in my Word, I've got both Endnote and Citavi. My Endnote is not working fully at the moment. They're a little bit fiddly. So if I turn on, for example, this pane show, I can see my references here, and I can choose one. So maybe I want a reference here to this one, and now I can insert it. This is the default style at the moment, so let's just insert it. I wonder what I have to do. That's not done it. Yes, it has. So it's inserted it, and it's inserted the bibliography, the text at the end. Let's have some more text. Let's insert this one. It takes a little bit of time. Let's have 2 in there. And put one at the end. Any old one, Carolyn here. And then if we decide we want to add a new one, obviously with this particular one system, if we add a new one above, it makes no difference. What matters, obviously, is the order at the end. And this is already, as you can see, in alphabetical order. It's done it automatically. RST, even though they're not in alphabetical order in the text, because I chose random ones. Then I can change the style. So I can use different styles here. That's the default style, and we can change it to a different one. Let's have number instead, so that let's have ACS and apply. And then it changes to the numbers, and they're obviously then in number order. And if I move this one, number 4, which is to check. If I move number 4, which is to Carolyn, Carolyn's the second name. Oops. I can copy it. Oops. It's not doing it. Let me just add them again. So if I add them again up here, add them after 2, it should become 3, and Carolyn appears as number 3. And then at the end, it goes back and changes this one to number 3, so we don't have to worry about fixing the numbers. With one of these programs, you don't have to do the programming of these. It's the code behind what the numbers are. If you do it by hand, you have to do that by hand. You have to program these numbers in properly. So there is an advantage to using this. It's a little bit of a pain to set it up. As you can see, my Endnote doesn't work. It is pretty much the same though. It looks almost identical. So the function is very similar. The good thing about things like Tutavi and Endnote is they work online and they accept the dump from Web of Science, which is a reference finding program. So that reduces the amount of typing you have to do to put these in. You copy them straight from your search, which is kind of nice. If you have the PDFs, as I said, they are connected. That works really well. And yes, at the end, you can change the style from numbers to Harvard style, words, or back again, or from numbers to superscript numbers to square brackets numbers, whatever you feel like. You obviously have to find the style that you want. You can actually add a style that isn't one that's already there if you want to invent a new style, but why do that? So here is how to do it. This is more the practical part. What we want to cite is when there's an idea, we cite the idea with a number. If it's more than the idea, then we cite it with taken from this place, so that then we've got either an equation, which we've actually taken from somewhere else, or an image where we've taken the art, or some words where we've taken the art of making a sentence. There we've taken more, so then we have to, or it's only fair to write, we've taken their words, we've taken their pictures, and that's done by saying from, taken from this place. Usually without permission if it's an internal document, because one is allowed to do that. But if it's going to go to open public, then you need to ask for permission and have it with permission.